good afternoon is what I would like to begin with, but in this case, I will have to extend it to good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a big shout out and greetings to the friends in India who are waking up in the middle of the night to listen to this beautiful, powerful presentation. So currently we have 32 participants. We have friends from Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, New Delhi joining us. And then we also have friends from our homegrown USA. We have friends from Boston, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, DC, California, New Jersey, and Houston. So welcome, friends. We are very excited to have you with us today. And we promise to give you nothing but the best. So some of you are familiar with TIE as an organization, but some of you may not be familiar with TIE. As I see, there are some names of participants who are not charter members or members of TIE organization. So TIE was started in 1992 by a group of successful, very successful entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And the whole idea was to empower entrepreneurship by providing mentorship, education, and investment. So these successful entrepreneurs believed that if they created, or if we as a society created an ecosystem to provide all the supporting elements to entrepreneurs, then entrepreneurship will thrive. And as a society, we will elevate our standards. So that is TIE, and currently we have over 15,000 members. We are in 14 countries, and we have 61 chapters. So it's a great, big organization, which is very powerful for networking as a professional network. All this would be not possible without our patrons, our sponsors, and we're very thankful to them because they help us put together series such as this one, which helps us educate our listeners and our friends. So our patrons our gold sponsor is Saudi Aramco. We're very thankful to them. And then we have Apex, we have Enaxis, Enuka Ventures, Han, HCC, Elon Investments, Munshi CPA, Rice Alliance, Songkran Kitchen. Our sponsors keep growing and we are always looking for more sponsorship. So if you're interested to learn any more about TIE, you can reach out to me or any one of our charter members. We will provide the information later at the end of the webinar. So what is LinkedIn and why is it relevant today? So man has been communicating from time immemorial. Interestingly, communication has been evolving. What started as cave painting back in 3500 BC is now evolved to this multiple and numerous social platforms which help us reach millions of viewers with a touch of a button. And that's the power of communication and the power of LinkedIn. Well, I am no expert in trying to talk more about LinkedIn and helping people navigate and find the right path to maximize and leverage the power of social media. But I do have an expert with me, and her name is Bafta Yemen. Bafta is an Emmy Award winner journalist. She's a professional coach, executive coach, and an international speaker. I met Bafta 2 years ago in a conference, and she was the speaker at the event. And I have to tell you, she was the most energizing speaker. She had the audience really eating out of her palm. So I walked up to her, introduced myself, and fast forward 2 years, we are good friends now. I reached out to Bafta and we were talking about the relevance of social media and the power of LinkedIn and how important it is to communicate with our customers and our professional network, especially during times such as this, where we don't have face-to-face interaction with our clients and our customer base. So very generously agreed to do a show for us. And by the way, it's pro bono. So thank you, Bafta. Really appreciate it. And welcome. And we look forward to your great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vanita, thank you so much for your kind words. I'm excited to be here, and I can't see all of you right now, but I certainly feel your presence. And as she mentioned, so many different people connecting right now from different time zones. I'm honored that every one of you made time for this, because I know your time is valuable, especially as entrepreneurs, especially during these uncertain times that we are all moving through. So I am, again, honored to be here with all of you and connecting in this way. And I'm so grateful that I met Vanita a few years ago at a conference, and that we connected. And sometimes you just meet people with great energy and it all aligns, right? So while we are just getting going and talking about the power of LinkedIn, just do me a favor, stay engaged in the chat, because Vanita is going to keep an eye on the chat while I'm going through the presentation. And I might give you a few prompts as we go through here, just to keep you guys engaged a little bit, right? Because I know that virtual presentations, we've all had them, right? So my first question to you to drop in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm just curious for my own knowledge as we go through here, how are you leveraging LinkedIn right now? 10 being the greatest, you're really leveraging it, you're really networking via LinkedIn, or more like the 1 or 2, that's why you're here today. So drop it in the chat. Vanita's just going to keep an eye on that as I get going. So of course, the topic at hand, the power of LinkedIn: navigate, leverage, and maximize your presence. I will be taking questions at the end. Forgot to mention that. Okay.
So what we do have from our friends here is kind of the entire range. We have some friends who are engaged at the level of 1 on a scale to 10, and then we do have one friend out here who says 9. So that's pretty impressive.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Okay. So we're going to hopefully get some of those numbers up in the coming weeks and months ahead, after learning what goes into really doing any of these three things: navigating, leveraging, and maximizing your presence. A little bit about me: as Vanita said, my name is Bofta Yimam. I spent more than a decade full-time in media as a TV anchor and reporter. I've appeared on CBS nationally, even now, but I run a full-time speaking and coaching business at this time. And I've been doing that for a while. I thoroughly enjoy it. Thoroughly, like many of you, enjoy doing different things, and I love leveraging my skills in messaging, communication, and storytelling to be able to do things on different platforms like LinkedIn. Quick snapshot on LinkedIn. What you may or may not know is that it has more than 600 million members. Let's just sit on that number for a second. 600 million members, more than that now even, in fact. 40% visit each day. Name me a platform, right, where you get 40% of 600 million members visiting each day, and 61 million are senior level influencers. So if you're not on LinkedIn, if you're not even paying attention to your profile, by the end of this presentation, I hope that you will be inspired to do so. Because if you remember what folks had to do to get the attention of their audience, of their ideal client, even 10, 20, 30 years ago, they were sending things in the mail and, mass producing different marketing tools to mail out to people at the mass level. With LinkedIn, you can reach thousands of people with a post. Okay. So things are much easier now. No excuses not to be on LinkedIn. Some of the benefits of LinkedIn, just want to move through here: networking with the masses, as I just mentioned; visibility. No question about that. If you're putting out your message and your branding, posting that engaging content, which we're going to talk about today, what kind of content will resonate with your brand and allow people to see you also as an influencer if you're not doing it today? Then you've got B2B, direct outreach. You can message people directly, finding speakers, experts. Maybe you are creating a program. Maybe you have a separate nonprofit that you're actually creating a program for, and you want to bring on speakers or experts in a particular lane. What better place than to go to LinkedIn or ask somebody for a referral from LinkedIn, because you know that they pluck speakers frequently. Then you've got jobs. Maybe you're looking to fill positions in the weeks or months ahead, or maybe you're looking to maybe even seek out a position yourself. Maybe you want to move back into a different field that you were in. So you can see that the benefits are very wide, and there are so many different ways where you can tap into LinkedIn, even if you're not trying to build that personal brand. It can be used for many other things. This LinkedIn training in particular will help you showcase your authority Who doesn't want to do that? Leverage your expertise and attract people to your brand. A quick overview of what we'll be going through today. The must-have elements on your LinkedIn profile. Think of your profile, I'm going to get into this in a moment, more like a storefront. So if you own a storefront, what are you looking to do? Maximize the space. So the same idea should be taken and applied within the virtual world. When we're talking about LinkedIn and your profile, this is an opportunity to really showcase yourself. So what are the elements you really need to have on your LinkedIn profile? The second in our overview, learning the power behind engaging content, my 5 pillars that I'll be sharing with you today, and then how to create engaging content effectively and efficiently, which is an area I think many people tend to struggle with because they think, what am I going to say that's meaningful? Or how am I going to say this or that will resonate with my ideal audience at this time? And so there's a lot of folks struggling with that. If that's you, you're not alone. Some of the myths behind LinkedIn. It's a business page, so I can't share any personality. Not true. Building a strong profile isn't worth the time or energy. It certainly is. It is your virtual storefront, so to speak. And then there's only one way to craft a strong profile. There are many ways to craft a strong profile. I believe in adding a bit of what you don't see in your resume, allowing a little bit more of your story, a little more personalization, if you will, within your summary, and which is part of your profile, in my opinion. And so we're going to show you an example of what I mean by that today, just so you have an idea. So jumping into number 1, the must-have elements on your LinkedIn profile. And again, I'll be taking questions live here at the end. Anita's keeping an eye for me as I go through here. So your headline, this is the short section directly under your name. It is your first impression. I encourage you, when you think of your headline, to think beyond your position. Think of your personal brand, your legacy. What do you want to be known for? If you had to pick the one thing that you really want to be known for in 2021, moving a little bit ahead, what would that thing be? And are you really using words that describe that accurately? Or are you not really paying attention to it much at all? And then what else in your headline? Leveraging keywords in your industry. I'll show you what I mean by that. So here are quick headline examples. Naturally, I took out the names and I just plucked this off of LinkedIn. And so when you look at headline examples like this, one is a meeting planner based out of Oxon Hill, Maryland, and that's all they had was meeting planner. The next person said CEO and founder at, and then they put their company, okay? And then the third, founder and chief executive officer at XYZ companies, right? So took out the names here, but I want to show you, these are what I would call really basic headlines. Are they incorrect? No, I mean, they accurately, this is what they do. They're the CEO, they're the founder, they're the meeting planner. But are they showcasing in this small space that LinkedIn gives you, but just enough space, but are they really showcasing and highlighting their authority and maximizing their presence with the language that they're using? Or do they sound like everyone else? Do they sound like everyone else? Remember, we want to stand out with our language. So here's an example of what I mean by revamped headlines. And I'm going to move this video piece right there. Okay, so an example of how to, if this was just a meeting planner, let's say they own their own company even. Meeting planner, 10 plus years directing events for Fortune 500 companies, logistical expert. Another one, an example of a revamped headline. Founder of boom, 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 insert, right? Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies. Now, in the previous presentation slide, it just said that he was a founder. When I looked on that particular person's profile, and I just grabbed it from LinkedIn, I noticed this authoritative piece, you know, Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies. And I'm thinking, if you have the space, why not put that in your headline? Here's another example. CEO of boom, boom, boom. Award-winning, and I found this in his summary, award-winning global software company with more than 3 million end users. That's pretty powerful. If you're, why not add this in the headline? Why bury it all the way toward the bottom of a summary? And then senior director, helping universities leverage tech to seamlessly integrate financiers with donor strategies. Tableau expert, right? So if you can drop in the chat, give me like a boom, boom. If you see the difference between what I just showed you, those basic headlines, and revamping the headline to really showcase the years of experience, maybe a bit of recognition, award-winning, 3 million end users. Sometimes a number really helps in the headline. I'm not saying to dismiss that you are a CEO or a founder, but sometimes adding this type of language of what you actually do will attract more your way. Make sense? Drop a boom, boom in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna keep it moving here. And I wanna pause. Let's see here. There we go. I want to pause real quick. Okay, that's my dog Shadow. So you got to have fun on these presentations, right? So I want you to grab a pen really quickly. And when I was going through those revamped headlines, just grab a pen real quick. We're going to pause for about 20, 30 seconds. And I want you to write down what language immediately came to your mind that's missing out of your headline. Is it award-winning? Is it some type of achievement? So really just take a moment. I want you to drop it in the chat if you like. But you can also, I'm going to go to black for about 20 seconds. We're going to get quiet. I just want you to jot it down because that's an action step you can take immediately after this presentation. 20 seconds, go ahead and write it down. All right, Vanita, anything cool in the chat? Did anyone drop anything that was interesting? Any golden nuggets there?
Yes, so we do have one, we have Willie here who says that he's the CEO, he's a value creator of billion-dollar companies, and he's done such sort of creation of wealth in 10 industries.
Wow.
I'm assuming it's missing from his introduction.
Yeah. Fantastic. And when we start to think like, what am I leaving out of my headline that should showcase, you come up with amazing answers like $1 billion.
Right, then we have another one from Arun, and he thinks he may be missing out on specifying complex project execution. So that's missing out from his introduction. And then we have another one from CH, and he says, Inventor of the Year, Texas Intellectual Property Lawyers. So
I mean, this is awesome, right? This is awesome. So I encourage you to see how each of you, and those are great answers. Thank you, Vanita. You know, so that's a way where you can think of, what am I ignoring really, or assuming people know about me, right? So questions to ask yourself as you go through this. Within my headline, how am I setting myself apart from other industry leaders, CEOs, or founders, especially in your niche, right? What about my work experience or story offers unique insight? So maybe it's the type of clients we just heard, value creator for $1 billion, boom, 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 right? Length of time in your niche. Some people have been doing this for more than 3 decades, you know? So imagine that number pouring out of your headline. And then maybe you're also an author, thought leader, or speaker in addition to what you do as a CEO and leading a great company. So those are some questions simply to ask yourself as you go through this revamp of your LinkedIn. So moving to the summary, the about section. This is so important because once you have the proper headline that's showcasing you, especially within your industry as a leader, what people will naturally do, and if you think about what you do when you check out someone else's LinkedIn profile, is you move to the summary. You move to the summary. And in the summary section, that's where you can put the beef, right? The content, a little bit more about your why, your authority, humanizing you, and how you can remain relatable. And then your wow, your unique element. You may be thinking, well, I don't know how to tap into my unique element. Well, as we go through this presentation, you're going to learn a little bit better how to do that. And what you want to focus on within your summary is thinking, what's not in my resume? Because people can see your resume, right? LinkedIn gives you that space to really expand on your resume. So what would you be able to share with someone that's not clear, evident, or maybe really highlighted within the resume? And usually we don't have our why in the resume, right? We may have 20 years in tech, but did we say why we got in there? That's not really in the actual resume section. Typically, it's more so achievements and so forth, and who you worked for, what you built, what your company does. If you can add it there too, that's fantastic, but we want the why in the summary. So I'm going to give you an example of what I mean of what we typically see on LinkedIn. So this is an example of an actual Fortune 100 executive coach that I worked with. And his headline said Fortune 100 executive coach. And his summary said this: I help high-level executive leaders make meaningful change in their lives and organizations. Executives who want to take their career to the next level, entrepreneurs turning their dreams into a new business, and excel in their personal lives at the same time. So if we look at this, this is nothing wrong with it, nothing really wrong with it. But as I put on the bottom here, this sounds like other coaches. Now, you may not be a coach, but in your industry, you can ask yourself, do I sound like everyone else in my industry? Do I sound like every other CEO? These are things to ask yourself. Here, I would say that this particular coach fails to position himself as an authority. He owns his own business. He's extremely successful, but he still hasn't maneuvered his summary to help him really stand out. He reveals nothing about how he ended up in this high-touch industry. As you know, coaching is high-touch. It's intimate. And so when he neglects to do that, I feel that it's a disservice to him because he's not letting people know why. Why did you decide to jump into this industry? And all of you can take the same thought process and weave it in. So here's what I did. Took this, revamped the headline. So yes, Fortune 100 executive coach. But I asked him, who do you really want to work with in the next year? He said, I really want to work really more so in high performance strategies. So there, we get a little bit more specific. This really helps in a headline. So in his case, especially because he's in that really, like I said, high touch, intimate space, we put, I help executives gain rapid results through high performance strategies, targeting who he really wants to be attracting. And each of you should think about what are the words in the language in your industry that you want to attract, and how can you move that into your headline? Because someone is going to search in the search bar of LinkedIn, high performance, and guess who may come up, right? So the headline is it's so important because it's what's going to help you stand out in the search when people are looking for. So people have found me because they're just looking for a coach, right? And so, or something in my headline, there's certain words there that they would be looking up. And so you want to be aware of that language, especially if you're out there doing B2B and so forth. So what else? I took his entire basic, what I call basic, nothing wrong with it, but kind of basic about section, the summary section. And here's what, I asked him a few questions. We did a deep dive. Here's what I learned about him. And I'm going to read this. 10 years ago, I was the minister. We grab people off the top. Today, I'm a Fortune 100 executive coach. We don't wait too long before reminding people of that. The desire to be an entrepreneur led me to change directions. After a few years of part-time coaching, my business outgrew the size of my church. Interesting nugget. That's when I took the leap of faith and launched Boom 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 LLC. Ultimately, the process of helping people take ownership of their life remains my passion. That's his big why. For the past 7 years, I've helped high-level executive leaders make meaningful changes in their personal lives and organizations. From executives who desire a dream position to rapid implementation of high-performance strategies and deep mindset work, I'm excited to help each individual figure out a customized roadmap to reach their goals. Previous clients include boom, 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 boom. When I'm not coaching, I'm trying to keep up with my 2 incredible daughters. Humanize him a bit. I look forward to connecting with you. I can be reached at boom, 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 right? What we noticed here is immediately there's more detail. There's the why. There's a bit more of authority weaved in here. And there's some interesting things that makes you feel, wow, I kind of feel like I know him a bit more now, at least compared to the last summary. If you notice the difference between that and this one, just drop a yes, yes in the chat. I just want to see if you notice what we did here is we pretty much took a very basic profile and leveraged it into something that's more powerful, more interesting, grabs your attention a bit more, and weaves in some of the authority and some of the other pieces. We understand why he moved into here. Vinita, does that make sense to you, even looking at this?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're getting a lot of yes from a lot of our friends here. But I think one of our friends, Shahid, specifically is asking, he said, isn't there a bit too much personal information in here?
Well, he's in a very high touch, intimate industry. Usually don't hire a coach you don't trust, and so there is, I think, especially in that's why it goes back to knowing your industry. And I think that one, I don't think it's too much personal information. Even for, let's say, a CEO who's in the steel industry. I personally don't, because I think that that's what the mistake most people are making, is they're not personal enough. So that's my perspective on it. Really good question. But I think when we add a bit more personal, and he could take out the daughters, he could take out some things if he wanted to. And that's certainly up to him. But when we neglect to share, we sound like everyone else. We fail to stand out, because remember, the resume talks about our big stats. The resume talks about transitions maybe within the company that we've had. So how are we leveraging the about section for people to get to know us? Now, if you don't want people to get to know you, then what's the purpose of leveraging LinkedIn? If we don't want to stand out as a leader, then you know what I'm saying? Like if we want to really be out there as a leader, as someone who is creating maybe a new trend in the industry, in the niche, then we got to talk a little bit more and let people in about why we care so much about that particular issue. So I maybe counter what most people say, but I don't think this is too personal. But I would love to hear what other people, as I go through, and this is just one example. Remember, there's not just one way to do it. There's a bunch of different ways to tell a story. And I'd be curious to know what part you think is too personal as well, the person who commented that. Remember, this is a dialogue, so it's a really good question. And for others, feel free to drop in the chat as well as I go through. So some bonus tips and a little bit more tactical. Completed profiles rank higher. So asking for recommendations, updating your skills section are really important, because again, completed profiles rank higher on LinkedIn. You do, if you don't have it already, want to invest in a professional photo. There's a million photographers out there who'd be happy to take your photo. So it's good to have an updated profile photo. I even think every year or two, it's good to look back and say, okay, is that an updated profile photo? Just so that you kind of stay current with that. In your about section, highlight metrics, initiatives launched, maybe a major bid secured. You can share the impact or results. So if you're in a field where you feel like you've made a difference, whether as a CEO, founder, director, employee, whatever it might be, you can feel free to add that. And I didn't do that as much with the coach, because it was a different industry, and it was a bit different. I'll just say that. He's not really talking about initiatives launched. Now, at some point, that coach could say something like, in the past year, I've helped, 300 other coaches launch their business and create six-figure income. So that might draw some beginner coaches to him, right? So depends on what are you trying to do on LinkedIn. So I think it's really important to ask yourselves that. You can feel free to add media or articles to your about section. This is a step that I think most people do not do, is adding the media and adding the articles to their about section. And media can be anything from a press kit to, it can be your logo. It can be a featured inside of an article in a magazine or in a newspaper. It can be a TV interview. All of those things, you can grab clips. And what's great about LinkedIn, there's no cost to any of these things. You can just upload the best that you have. The most recent, of course, is preferred. What other bonus tips? Be sure your current location and industry are updated. Sprinkle in authenticity. I go back to what that young gentleman said in the chat, but personal interests, maybe volunteering, or that you're bilingual. I think some of these things add in that personal touch that allow people to get to know you beyond the resume. If you're bilingual, or if you volunteer for Thai or another organization, somebody might see that and say, oh, wow, I'm part of Thai in, another city. So sharing a little bit is great as well. And then don't rely on your headline or summary to do the work. Post engaging content on your wall and engage on other people's posts. Some people don't do that either. They, in their efforts to build that personal brand. They only post, they never comment on anyone else. You're building a network here. So networking requires what? Just not you, but you also giving to others as well. Some bonus tips, and I mentioned this, the search bar just a moment ago, but diving into LinkedIn's search bar at the top of your screen on LinkedIn, everyone has access to this. You can take it a step further and filter your search so you can create a hyper-targeted approach. So you can start adding job titles, people, your ideal client, for example, to increase your network connection. So if you only wanted to, for example, increase your network to CEOs in Dallas, Texas, with company sizes of, you know, I don't know, 1 to 500 employees or whatever have you, you could create all of that in the filters. And you could continuously just look for people who you want to connect and network with. Again, it goes back to, who do you want to attract? And it's a really good question that you should think about before diving into any revamping, because who you want to attract is something you're keeping in mind as you're creating the language, as you're deciding what to put or what not to put inside of your about section. Does that make sense? Great. Number 2, learn the power behind engaging content, my 5 pillars. Vanita, should we take a moment to pause? Do we have any questions coming in that I need? Is it too many questions that we should pause or just keep going? I'm going to go by your judgment.
No, I think we do have one more question that we can talk about. And again, I think it's the concern, it's from Melvin Menes. And he is, again, talking about, you know, how much do you personalize? And he specifically mentioned that maybe one can talk about team members or relationship within the team. So do you want to talk a little bit about what is sort of more personal and what seems, you know, how do you distinguish between what is professional and personal, and how much of that personal information should be added?
Right. I think what would be beneficial is if we could unmute Melvin so I can do a bit of Q&A. Would that be possible, Melvin? Because then it helps me understand a bit more. Or should we wait till the end? I'm wondering.
I don't know if we're quite set up. Let me see. I think we'll wait till the end.
Is unmuted if he wants to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm unmuted, yes. So I was reflecting on the earlier comment about about making it too personal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in your case, you're doing the profile of a coach who's reaching out to almost like a wide anonymous group of people. And it's possible that, you know, if I say, for example, in my case, that I've earned a lifelong loyalty from team members across industries and employers, right? So that is personal, but it relates to what I do.
So my thought on that is it sounds like everyone else's summary. It doesn't help me understand who you are, why you entered your Melvin particular industry. Anyone could just say, yeah, I've got, you know, lifelong strong relationships. It doesn't let me in.
Yeah.
What's the fear in being a little bit more open? I'm wondering, because this is clearly something of a concern for some people on here. So what is, you don't have to be, again, as open as that particular coach, and it's not the same industry, which is why I said at the beginning, you can create different profiles and different summaries based on who you are and who you're trying to attract. But Melvin, what would be the fear in giving a little bit more vulnerability?
So the fear is, I'm not necessarily saying it specifically to the profile you put up. The fear is that the person has little to say and is trying to add fluff to, you know, fill up space.
Mm-hmm. May I ask who you're trying to attract?
I'm sorry?
May I ask who your ideal audience is? Like who you're trying to attract?
Well, it's either going to, in my case, it's either going to be potential employers or collaborators.
Okay. So
in the technology space.
Okay, in the tech space. So if, you know, and again, I don't know you, right? This is me meeting you for the first time, but I'd wonder why you got into the tech space to begin with, and how much maybe you've managed to achieve or do or start trends or what have you within that short or long amount of time. I don't think that's fluff. I think that's allowing somebody to get to know you beyond, hey, she's able to, or he's able to create lifelong relationships. You know, okay. That's a given. If you're successful in your industry, let me say this. If you are successful in your industry, It's a given that you know how to deal probably with some type of relationships because you've been able to develop a network. So you could use that language, but to me, that sounds like everyone else.
Yes.
You could say why you entered tech and what you've been able to achieve and maybe some metrics, and just put 1 or 2 sentences related to that. You don't have to make it the whole summary, but 1 or 2 sentences, I don't see how that would hurt anyone. It would in fact let somebody in.
Yes, I
Different
agree. I
perspective.
think what you're doing is you're making it contextual and relevant.
Yes, and I think it gives, this is a different perspective, right? So often we hear just share metrics, just share what you've done, just share what you've achieved. But people often gravitate to people they, as you all know, like, and trust. And part of that is seeing what's human and relatable. So I'm not saying every post, and I'm not saying every summary has to have, every single thing has to be all about vulnerability. What I'm saying, to sprinkle it in. And I think if we think about people we're attracted to, if we think about people we're attracted to on LinkedIn or any social media platform, guess what? They've been more vulnerable than most. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily they're your ideal client. But let's look at, even if you look at Gary Vee, open and vulnerable about a lot of the different, very successful entrepreneur, Gary Vaynerchuk, and is very open, vulnerable, and people gravitate toward him, and he gives a lot, and still respected and still an authority. So I think it's interesting that we think it only, and I'm not saying you, Melvin, right? But I just think there's a perspective shift. Can we not be both? Can we not be authoritative and still vulnerable?
Yes.
So it's a great question, and I thank you for being open and transparent here, because I think that you are speaking what many others may be thinking. So thank you, Melvin. I hope, does that help you? I hope.
It's excellent. I always agreed with the point of making it personal, but I think the magic is, and it's what you're doing right now, is making it contextual and relevant. So it does not look like filler because I don't know what to say. It is truly bringing me out in the context that I'm, trying to reach out to.
Right. And it's always thinking like, how am I bringing, got to go back to that audience. Who am I trying to attract? And that particular coach's standpoint, it's different. He can talk about his past as a minister or this or that. That might attract his ideal audience, right? So for you, it's thinking, okay, the tech space, who am I trying to attract? And also thinking about what helps me stand apart. Maybe it is your background. Maybe it is your education. Maybe it's ethnicity. Maybe it's, there's so many things. So it's thinking about what about me stands out that I can mention here. So I appreciate your question. I'm going to keep on moving through, because I think we'll have more questions, but it's always good to take a question in the middle because it makes everyone else think, oh, I got a question. Okay, so we're going to keep it going, as I promised to stay within my time slot here. Thank you, Melvin, again. I appreciate you for coming on. Number 2, in our overview, we focused on learning the power behind engaging content and my 5 pillars. So let me move this piece right here. Engaging content. I encourage everyone, again, this is my perspective, to focus on providing value-based content and sprinkle in variety by leveraging the content pillars. So it's one thing to have a beautiful profile and summary. It's another to add to your brand and your platform and your leadership by actually posting content, not just sharing other people's content, sharing other people's quotes, but maybe creating your own quote, creating your own content that's shareable. So just thinking about it a little differently. As Business Insider said, and I have it on the left side of the screen, engagement on LinkedIn is increasingly taking a more conversational and personal tone. LinkedIn users are increasingly sharing personal stories, life lessons, and work experiences on the platform. I can see some folks, maybe your heart starting to beat a few times, a little bit more, thinking, oh my goodness, how much do I have to share in the content? Same thing applies, right? Same thing applies as the profile. Everyone's different. Everyone's summary is different. And same thing in this regard, that content is also contextual, as it was said so well before. So educate, entertain, engage, promote, and elevate. This is no particular order. These are just 5 content pillars, meaning if you work these pillars in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a different one for each day, your content, as I said at the very top here, will have that variety, right? Again, thinking about who are you attracted to? People who sprinkle different types of content. They're not just talking about themselves. They're talking about other things as well. They're providing value. They're not asking for anything. They're simply giving. And so if you focus on the content pillars, I guarantee that you will start to develop kind of the wiring, I call it like a content muscle, of pulling out more content from what you already know. So it is, again, if you're not doing this, it's going to help you think a little bit differently about it. So how do we take those 5 content pillars? And I wanted to give you some examples, and that's why we're going to create engaging content effectively and efficiently. Now, before I go into this piece of it, it doesn't mean that these are the only types of posts that you can do, but these are examples that I'm showing you. And I think examples help us see things, and that's why I put it here. But just like the coach earlier, it doesn't mean that you have to use this exact thing. It's more to get your gears going. So here are some content ideas that can help expand your brand and authority. And as I put at the top, effective content taps into the pains, desires, and frustrations of your ideal client, your ideal audience. So really knowing, what are they going through? What do they desire? What do they get frustrated about? What makes them say yes as soon as we are on that call? What made them actually call me because they were in such deep pain? And everyone's in a different industry, in different cities. So you know your ideal client, right? So example of educate. So I encourage you to start thinking of yourself as an educator. Experts teach. So if you want to build that brand as a leader, as an industry leader, maybe more speaking opportunities, hosting your own workshops, or whatever it might be for you that you're really thinking of, outside of even just as a founder or CEO. And I say just, but that's a big deal in itself. But outside of maybe just the framework of that, educating, teaching element of your expertise, saying like, I've planned 300 events. Here are my top 5 learning lessons. Maybe you're a meeting planner. That would be a good example. Or a colleague asked me how I managed to, and then you would put here the solution your audience desires so quickly. Here's a number 1 thing I told her and why it'll take you only 3 minutes to implement this step 2. Another example, a meeting planner could do a post explaining how to spot hidden fees inside contracts. If you started your business from nothing, like from the ground up, you could educate someone on the one thing you did to help to make sure you took that leap. It doesn't mean that this is speaking to always your ideal client. It could just be an inspirational post, okay? And we'll get to that in a moment. But entertain is another one here, one of the content pillars. Share a humorous story about an incident that was veering off track and how you helped it cross the finish line successfully. You know, if you have a good humorous side, you could write a post, or you could do a video and post a video. Elevate their mindset, core values, perspective you could give them within your niche. What are myths you could tap into? Create or reflect, as I put here, on a framework or formula you could share to elevate an individual's perspective on your process. So maybe you have a process in your industry that you've managed to shorten the time frame for, and you offer a quick tip. Everyone's industry is different. So that's why I say these are just quick examples, but it gives you the idea. And then engage, ask questions. So leaders are not always pretending, not that. Leaders are not always the ones saying, I know everything. You know, we rarely listen to the leaders who say those things. We usually are looking for leaders who also help other people lead and also build a network for their industry. If you think about it, it might take them 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year, but they have this way where they're not just spewing information, they're bringing people together. And so when you show up as a leader in your niche and you ask questions like, what's your single biggest challenge within something in your industry? Or if you could ask me anything about boom, 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 insert your expertise, what would it be? Post an article related to your industry and provide some context with your personal thoughts, and maybe prompt a response with, do you agree, yes or no? Again, just examples, but thinking about leaders who you're attracted to and how they help build a community, help other people find answers. They're not always just giving information and talking about themselves. they are also engaging others within the industry that they're in. And then promote. Don't promote every post, but promote events during the planning stages. So if you have a virtual conference coming up, why not promote it during the planning stage? Maybe celebrate a win for your company or industry. Maybe you're on the comeback after a rough summer through these uncertain times during the pandemic, and you're coming back from that. And what's going right for you? What are you doing now that's different? How did you pivot? You know, inspire someone, but you're also naturally promoting. You're mentioning your company probably and what you're doing. Take a photo of a planning session and explain something unique behind the scenes. Cheer on a fellow colleague. Show gratitude for your team. But these are all different ways where you can help build effective and engaging content. And once you start to build the content muscle, then it becomes a lot easier. Some will say, well, what's too much? You can decide what's too much, right? These are your posts. These are your videos. This is your pen, right? Writing it. You can decide, you know, I don't really want to talk about that. So right now, just don't do it. But then also say to yourself, but why am I withholding that? What is it that's causing me? And just so you think about it, what's causing me to not talk about that? Is it because I don't want to look a certain way? Is it because I don't want to look like a failure? Really asking yourself these questions, because oftentimes some of our best content is when we reveal, whoa, it's been a rough month. We're coming back from it. And here are the things we're working on. What about you? How's it been for you? But it's that kind of post that makes us think, wow, yeah, I get it. I've been there. And when you start to connect with someone in that way, that's when things change and you start to see them as more than their job title, right? As more than just a CEO in the job title description. You start to see them as a human, as someone who's relatable, who goes through ups and downs, who doesn't have this perfect life that is often showcased on social media. So thank you. I just want to open this up, as I promised, to Q&A and continue to answer any questions you have. And I'll keep this up in the meantime for those of you who have questions that are a bit deeper maybe, or whether it's speaker bookings or anything really, or executive coaching, you can feel free to email me. I put my email here, but I want to make sure that Vinita do answer some questions that may be coming in through the chat. I hope that this has been really beneficial. And if anything, just changed maybe your perspective on how you see LinkedIn or social media right now, because this could be applied to Instagram or Facebook, and many of you have business pages I know that are trying to grow that virtual audience. So Vinita, I'll pass the mic to you.
Right. So no, thank you very much, Bafta. I think we do have more questions coming in. We have one from somebody said about Facebook. Yeah. So we have one from Jennifer, and she was talking about her sort of concern in, again, posting material or content that might make it seem like Facebook. So just because you're afraid of, it revealing more vulnerability, and that's what typically, Facebook is more open. And so how do you make sure you don't appear the content to look like?
Great question. So one thing that I do differently on LinkedIn versus Facebook is I don't really use emojis nearly as much. Like I keep it pretty more straight. Also keep it contextual to the audience. So I'll say, hey, LinkedIn. So just making sure it's a little bit more pointed. Language, obviously Facebook, maybe a bit more casual, maybe even the photo more casual. LinkedIn, just being mindful of the photo, being mindful of the language you're using. LinkedIn, I believe, has less space that you're able to post. So it's going to actually push you to write a bit more succinctly and tightly, so that you aren't, Facebook kind of, I think, allows for more, not to say for ranting, we're kind of going a bit more long-winded. So LinkedIn, because it has a short amount of space, I've noticed that you do have to be tighter in your language. I'm not sure if you have tried already to post on LinkedIn and felt like you were becoming more Facebook. I don't know if we could unmute the young woman who had asked. I was not sure.
Sure. Jennifer? Samia, can we unmute Jennifer?
Jennifer.
Oh, hey.
Okay, yeah. Great.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for addressing that. Yeah, I was sort of making a comment with the gentleman you were speaking to, and this issue seems to be a common one, and that is, everyone's on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and yes, those seem to be much more personal. And those of us on LinkedIn, as I have been for 15 years at least, want to keep LinkedIn professional. And yet I do agree with your comments about making our posts and our profiles more human or humanized, as you say. So I really like that. And even telling the story of why we want maybe the industry or the technology that we're in. I think that really is good guidance. I do. And I was just suggesting that that's why so many of us might be fearful of the personalization, only because we don't want LinkedIn, as you've said, no emojis, all of that. We just don't want it to become a Facebook. And I think that's just the issue. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think these are great thoughts and comments, and I'm seeing all of the questions too in the corner now that I've opened it up. So one thing I'll say is you don't have to be personal in every post, nor am I encouraging that. So I'm saying with all of these, I'm saying to sprinkle it in. So it's not heavy, hey, I've gone through this, and then every day it's kind of going into it. Like we see sometimes on Facebook, here's what I ate for dinner. Like I think we all agree that we don't want LinkedIn to be that way. But I do think a sprinkle of personal does help in your posts and your content, whether it's in an engaging, one of the 5 pillars, engaging, whether it's educating. Here's what I noticed when we had the worst year of our business back in 2009 in the tech industry. I noticed that boom, 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 boom. That's sharing a bit of your story and vulnerability, but also how you came back. And if you mention, this is what was going on, it was even hard to keep the family together, but we made it through, and here's what I learned through that process. I don't think I think that kind of post just allowed me in, but the next post doesn't have to be the same tone and nature and content. I do believe when you want to win on LinkedIn, you provide value-based posts the most. So value-based post means posts that are going to help your ideal audience, or who's following you, and making sure that you stay on tap with what they really desire. PDF, pains, desires, and frustrations. What are they really trying to achieve? I just put a post the other day promoting someone else's book. Nothing to do with me, but it's just a promotional post. Just posted about a book that was really good, was an easy read, and I enjoyed it, and tagged the person. So thinking of this more as this is not the rules of LinkedIn. This is more of a mindset, perspective, thought process on how can I stand out? How can I leverage and navigate and maximize my presence? And if you think about thought leaders in their summaries, they're usually saying, I'm championing, I'm fighting for, I'm on a mission to do boom, boom, boom. It's bigger than just that one business that they have, or 2 businesses or 3 businesses. It's broader. It's broader because they're looking at it from like that 30,000 foot view to say, okay, this is what needs to change. And I'm part of this mission helping to do this through my product or service. And I just encourage everyone here to think about people that they're following and attracted to, and you'll start to see that the language is not always the same. It doesn't sound like everyone else. They're really about that. And that's how they land other things like speaking engagements and other things that come their way, because they're showing what they're about through not only their summary, which is a piece of it, but also through the post. So fantastic. Great.
Thank you.
Questions.
I hope that helps. I think that's so good. And I like the idea of even expressing an opinion. What about the groups that we belong to? I think I belong to 50, and you're reminding me that I need to go clean that up or check those. But is it different when you comment in our groups that we belong to?
Groups are great. They're like, to me, like tight-knit communities. Like if Facebook is a state, I feel like that would be like a city. Like it's kind of just, or a town. It's getting to know somebody and saying, okay, you're definitely in this group because hopefully there's something that we're aligning on based on the group title or the group mission. I think it's like anything else. It's navigating it. It's saying, okay, is this the group that I really want to be in? And just picking some that you want to be active in, and really thinking about it as building relationships, and which I'm sure you do. You've been on LinkedIn for a while, so it sounds like you use it great. rather than transactional, we reach out immediately. It's just building a relationship. It's setting up a virtual coffee. It's not asking for anything. I think groups are really particularly good for just because you know they're in your lane, so to speak, if they're in that group, hopefully. So, you know, offer a virtual coffee with someone who you feel like maybe you could just help, really from a service point of view. That's my thought on groups.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, it's great stuff. So,
After we have one more question on the frequency. I think that's a good one to address. How frequent should you be posting on LinkedIn?
I say a few times a week, at least, especially if you're trying to build, again, goes back to what are you trying to do on LinkedIn? I think if you're trying to build a brand and you're starting like really from scratch and you need to revamp everything, look, you could post each day if you wanted to. But I think at minimum, being active 2-3 times a week, if you're doing nothing right now, is really good. Value-based posts to me are better than zero. So, or better than, you know, I should say, like I'd rather have value-based post more than just fluff. So thinking about the quality of your posting is what I meant to say. Somebody asked me if I review folks' LinkedIn profile and give them feedback on improvement ideas. Yes, you can email me, Shahid. You can email me if you'd like that type of service.
Should we, yeah, I guess.
I'm looking to see what we missed. Going through the, so I'm just going to scroll up a little bit, if you don't mind, Vanita. May I do that?
Sorry. I think there's this one. Okay.
Right. So Melvin commented, yes, Melvin, as I mentioned, yeah, I do believe you need to, everyone needs to think about their target audience and their profession. But yes, I do believe that, you know, like I said before, vulnerability can be sprinkled in, doesn't have to be the main thing for every summary. For recommendations, how you suggest getting good ones or valuable ones? Catherine asked a really good question. And I would say that, Catherine, one of the best things you can do, or anyone else, is to think about people who you would ask for a maybe even job recommendation, and just, you can easily through LinkedIn shoot them a message. If you have your cell phone, you could just say, hey, just shot you a LinkedIn message. I'm looking for more recommendations, would appreciate it. But look, thinking about people, you know, you've worked for, groups you've spoken in front of, who really appreciated you. And that's kind of the mindset that I would have. They would be the same or similar people who I'd ask for a job referral type of thing for. Let's see. Please explain more about having multiple profiles. What can one person best do to address multiple unrelated industries of interest? I'm not quite sure what you mean. David, do you mind unmuting and just expanding on that? Multiple LinkedIn profiles? Is that what you're referring to? Maybe we unmute David. Is he still with us? I'm not sure.
David, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, have you got me unmuted yet?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I heard a comment about that you could have multiple profiles, and so I was just wanting to follow up on that a little bit. There's, you know, my interests are very widespread and different industries that don't generally relate necessarily to each other. So it's been one of those things. It's kind of a quandary. How do I address people in one industry that's very different from another industry?
Great question, David. Thanks for sharing here. I think it goes back to what is my goal on LinkedIn, and also realizing that having multiple profiles can be not only time consuming, but it can make you feel like, you know, a little bit scattered, I imagine. So what is your goal on LinkedIn? Is it to do what specifically, and why have multiple profiles? Can they not fit into one?
Well, I was just, I say, trying to understand your comment. I think the comment made earlier that you could have multiple profiles, and I've never really thought about that. But is that viable to do, one person having separate profiles?
I didn't mention that. We didn't talk about multiple profiles.
Maybe I misunderstood.
Maybe it was referring to, David, like Facebook and to that question. But Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, you know, those are to me all different profiles on different platforms. But on LinkedIn, I typically would recommend one profile that you make really strong, and leverage that one strong profile to encompass what it is, you know, who you are, what you're trying to attract, and build a network through that one profile.
Okay, no, thank you for
Does that
clarifying
make sense?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. You're probably talking about different media, different platforms.
Yeah, I think that's what we were doing. But thank you, David. I appreciate you coming on and asking. Priya says great content and tips. Thanks very much. Just kind of moving through here to make sure I respect everyone's time. Rishi says, feel like I'm walking away much more LinkedIn woke. That's funny. Yeah, I guess exactly. And then there's another question regarding about sharing your I think I just was muted. Regarding about sharing your personal achievement, how often do we need to share? Again, there's no need here. So needs, rules, throw them out the window. It is personal. So I just want to put that out there. How often do we need to share? It might, that the people you attract might think you're just trying to impress them. I think, you know, a celebratory post, letting people know what you're up to, sharing your journey. I think that it's like most things, AG, it's how you do it, I think, more than anything else. And that's why if you guys go back in this presentation, I mentioned sprinkling the content pillar so that that's a promotional post, right? So every post shouldn't be a promotional post. So if you're posting 2 or 3 times a week, the promotional post might not be happening, but every, 2 weeks, and if you really are going even every single day, it would be 1 every 5 days, right? So if you're just going with content pillars of creating educational and value-based posts and engaging and entertaining and elevating and then promoting, I don't recommend regular promoting. I personally don't worry about, what's that, Benita?
I think, we are running short on time. We're very,
Okay.
Yeah, so
We'll wrap up. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So I'm just going to scroll through this recording. Okay, great. You guys will send it. Okay. I'm just going through to make sure no one's been waiting this whole time to ask a question, and then I totally dismiss them. Let's see. Okay. So the recording will be shared. I think we'll just answer that right now.
And can they reach out to you for if they have any questions, they can email you directly, or would you like?
Yes. Best thing to do would be to email me directly. If you're looking for some type of support within LinkedIn, I do help one-to-one custom help. We would find a time on a calendar to speak, but the best thing to do would be to email me, and then we would go from there. I'd be happy to connect with you all further and do a deep dive. But I hopefully that today gave you, hopefully just shifted your perspective, gave you some action steps that you can do it literally tonight, or whenever you're watching this recording, for those of you catching the replay. So I thank you again for having me on. I know we're running out of time. So many good questions. I could keep talking about this forever, but thank you again for having me.
So yeah, thank you all, and thank you, BAFTA, for such an informative session. We all really enjoyed it, which is, as you can see, the chats they're busy and you're getting questions one after the other. So we have a lot of questions answered today. We're very happy and excited. Thank you. And
connect on LinkedIn. I meant to say, add me on LinkedIn. I forgot to say that to the folks here. Sorry, go ahead, Benita. Sorry, interrupted.
Yes, I would like to thank BBVA. I think I forgot to mention their name. They have been a very long-time sponsor for us, and we appreciate that very much. So thank you all, and let's LinkedIn. Samia.